every even awakened being has to go through this conditioning. And at a certain point, what gets you out of it is intuitively you're drawn to something higher, or you suffer too much. So the suffering can actually be a catalyst to get them out of that oppression. They belittle themselves each day, because I always say, you know, I work for God. And I don't mean God on paper, I mean God within you, right? As we said before we started this discussion fully, I'm speaking to you not from this body. The body is within what I'm speaking as.
So in this environment of gnosis, or temporary gnosis, or complete abolishing of any sense of self, you come across people that have these very formatted versions of virtue and absolute emanated states of holiness. But through that, you can tell that they're corrupted by their minds and their own version of reality. It's a subjective to objective struggle. We refer to that as yin and yang, the symbiosis, the dance from one stream. And it's a constant, you know, you have revelations, you recognize, oh my goodness, I am whole and everyone else is broken. And, you know, this goes on and on and on. I find this, being in the social sphere and interweb, people tend to be self-righteous versus the righteous path of awareness. And if you're fragile and you cannot withstand the diminished returns of someone's impermanent personality that will just collapse like their body into the dust, as everything does, you will be a little bit more rough around the edges. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of friends that are channelers, healers, psychics. They're all incredible people, yet they won't meet the measured moment of running into the fire of the internet. For me, I love it. It's like I already set the magic. Anyone that wants to consume and play in the sense of cannibalism, or this consuming themselves from the inside out, when you fall into my web, the more you sling at me, the more the diminished return. And in turn, their energy bars go further and further down, only because they refuse to emanate holiness. So when you're teaching your students or your clients, what is your go-to to bring them to a place of not delusion, but another level of awareness of self, which is a progression, right? It doesn't necessarily, can be instantaneous, and I always promote that, I always suggest that. Yet, you know, the labyrinth of the finite-minded human condition tends to bring you back into this broken system. What would you use yourself?
The most powerful thing of all, which is awareness.
Mm.
So I show them as awareness, they witness through, whether it's a one-on-one session or a video, I always show the same thing. What is original to you and what is not original to you. So what is usually not original is some sort of low grade, diminishing program that into confinement. They're living a life of objectives, and they're not even realizing who the subject is or what they actually are living as, because it's constant overstimulation. And I believe that that puts them into a simulation, because they're moving in excess, they're moving rapid, they're overdoing it with their mind, and they're not realizing that they're aware of their mind. So the mind has shapeshifted into the mind has shapeshifted into their self, and they take it to be themselves. And that's the false identity. That's the human condition. And that's how every even awakened being has to go through this conditioning. And at a certain point, what gets you out of it is intuitively you're drawn to something higher, or you suffer too much. So the suffering can actually be a catalyst to get them out of that oppression. And they belittle themselves each day, because I always say, you know, I work for God. And I don't mean God on paper, I mean God within you, right? As we said before we started this discussion fully, I'm speaking to you not from this body. The body is within what I'm speaking as. Now, if anyone can catch that subtlety, they're already free. That is the key to the door of the house of God. That understanding, fully grasping what you're speaking as, what you're seeing from, as the perceiver, but then even once you extend a little bit more into duality or reality, which is not fixed, by the way, it's always changing. But when you extend out of that place of the speaker, of the perceiver, then don't get mixed up. Don't fall into the tricks, you know, and there's a whole system out there. So what I do is I break down the system. I see the entities who are dispersed from another force that is here as a part of the play. It's not, you know, it takes on the role of something demented, but really it's just showing you your way back, because eventually you have to get out of that trap. You have to get out of that loop. So what I do is I remove entities from spirit beings attached to their energy body, usually the chakra system, throat chakra. They like to shut that down, because then they can't relate the energy from the lower to the higher, right? So if the throat chakra is closed, or anything in the middle is shut, then it's already shattered, the energy body. The root chakra is hyperactivated, because not just consumerism, but fixation on only the material plane and getting lost in the ego, right? And that's what I'm referring to, is getting them out of that state, because there's a vast amount of colors that they can't see, right? And there's a vast amount of energy that they're connected to. We are all connected to, but there's a whole system in place to take that from you. So you have to win yourself back.
So in the world of context and subjectivity, which is the very pitfall for 100% of people, very few can be absolute and completely acceptant of everything as whole. So, you know, you reference God as a catalyst for your true potency. Furthermore, I mean, looking at your field, it's quite clear you have a relationship with Jesus Christ. He's a great guy. I enjoy hanging out with him. The question is, do you find that abrasive in a world where labels tend to limit? Like within Taoism, the rite of passage is you take yin, which is the inversion of all colors, you take yang, which is the emission of all colors, and your ability to alchemize the two is the convergence, creating that holy stream we refer to as the primordial mother. It is eternal, immortal, forever, forever. That is the true sense of self, that you are being able to crystallize the immortal self within a material state. And this is where spontaneous, miraculous things take place, supernatural, as you spoke of, seeing, you know, entities and being aware of the system itself. Because the interplay, I've never met a person that has been able to put in context the energetic systems, but where are they within Christianity? They don't exist. Everyone always uses chakras. And chakras to me are another Hindu thing. We refer to them as dantians. They're energy elixir fields. And so when I look at, and it's interesting you refer to the root chakra as a starting point of contention. To me, when I read someone's abilities, and it's just, fundamentally, it's an umbrella. So sensory perception. Like the chill you're starting to get in your body, you know, the emergence of things where when we move our hands, we start to play with the substance that is the psychokinetic abilities of union. That where this conversation is real, this is substantive. We are speaking in a place of energy, and the energy is basically the currency of this material state. You can't deny it. So energy, how is it conjured and held? So when it was funny how you talk about the chakras. Okay, so within Taoism, there's 9 dantians between the earth and the universe, that through the embodiment of the primordial mother, you alchemize and actualize the system that creates the ability of the spirit to walk the path of the human, but affect change that returns to a holy stream. So when I look at what you refer to as the root chakra, it's a gateway. Every point for me is either 2 things. It's either emotion or virtue. And if you're playing a video game, the true embodiment is to take the emotion, dissolve it, return it back into the one stream, and evoke the virtue. So within the root chakra, we're talking about parameters. What are you capable of? It's like the fastest way to determine the limitation of an individual. The more puckered up they're just puckered up, they're contracted. You will find an excess of this energy, and it just shows you how limited they are. But most people that speak that way will overreach other people's boundaries. They have no value or any sort of like acknowledgement. And other people also have boundaries, and why don't you stay within your own boundaries instead of overreaching? But they get very, very militant about it. It's like, well, you can't talk to me that way, but I could talk to you this way. It's crazy, man. And so actualizing that is to create the perfect ruby red color is a level of acceptance. It's a virtuous thing where there's complete dissolve of any subjectivity or judgment that comes with it, and then you get rid of the emotion that really is more rigid. That's how we see it within Taoism. Now, there's a million ways to do these things, but it sounds to me like we're in a similar path of alchemization in the way you use your techniques. I really like the way you speak of the throat chakra, because the disconnect between the finite mind and the absolute embodiment requires an activation. And most people stay in their head. They're not speaking volumes as a whole. I love that. And, yes, I mean, people are the master keeper creator of their reality. They are creating their own experience. So if you believe in the boogeyman, you believe in fear, you believe in heaven and hell, you believe in demons and Satan and all the good stuff that comes with it, you will find it. It's real. Like everything else, there's no exception to the rule. How do you capture and dissolve these entities? Because for me, one of my favorite things to do, having been taught this over 30 years ago through my monastery as an ordained priest, one of the very big components was exorcisms. I've done thousands of them. They're fun. How do you capture that entity? What do you do with it and make it an absolute? I mean, there's only one time in over 36 years I've ever had an entity hang around. It was a 3-hour haul, man. It was interesting. It was like brimstone and fire everywhere. And it was a clinger. But every other entity, personally, from my experience, when I meet them with something that is so dissolvent, it's this absolute. So the second they receive this very low frequency, because people tend to think that love is absolute. It is, but it's still not the complete stream. But once you meet them with love, they tend to dissolve and go on to do something else. What about you? Explain it to me.
They latch on typically, and when they latch on to someone, they can be there for 10 years. They can be there for 1 year.
Yeah.
They can be there their whole life. And what happens is, this is where it gets complex the most. The individual that's been latched onto creates a form of unconscious attachment to the program that that entity is projecting onto that spirit, that being. So it creates what we would know in the modern world as like a toxic relationship. It creates a certain bond that they become dependent, codependency on the false revelation that that entity presents it with through the ego mind, the never-ending narrator, the voice we spoke about earlier, that ego. And what happens is they keep overextending themselves, and the entities, this is where they get multiple. I've seen some where they will stack on the leg. They will stack up on the leg and they make a home there. And what does that symbolize? Pulling them down, anchoring them down further into the physical realm. It's already overdone with the root chakra. The thing about the root chakra, before I go any further, is it's so enhanced that it's being overrun, and all the consciousness is only fixated on that plane. I see them as planes. Also, dimensions, energy vortexes to enhance everything. And when you're at the bottom there, what's happening is that's the lowest plane of existence. So you spoke of Satan. Well, if he exists there mainly. And the psychological mind, where he would typically lure a spirit with, it gets inverted. This is why that reality where they're so lost, where we've all been lost in that, it's an inverted reality. So their mind, instead of being up here, which they have been conditioned to think it's here, they're actually in a lower sphere, on the lower level where fear is, and they're only thinking lower body, only thinking survival state, only thinking working for a system, money, and they fear money. This is where it gets tricky, because the program of money that entity put on everyone, and what happened is that is a part of what I mentioned a minute ago about how it's a dualistic approach where you keep giving back to it, and it keeps presenting you with a prize, with a script, with paperwork. Sign up for this, believe in this. It's like an analogy I can give you is, it's also Saturn-based time. They worship time, they worship Saturn, and it's all the construct keeps them on the loop of the clock. So when someone is working for that system, they typically will say, I'm clocking in. I'm going to clock in. This is all very purposeful. One thing I focus on a lot in my book and videos are words. Because words, they hold such, and it doesn't resonate with everyone. It's only for those who are looking for something to
that's
slip
my
out.
bag. That's my bag, my friend. We need to get into that. We refer to that as the rhapsody. Let's explore that once you finish. Go.
That's all the rupture. The rupture comes because they are inverted and they're living only in the lower plane of existence. And that's where, you know how Jesus was tempted by a snake, right? This snake, notice, this is one of the main creatures on the planet that's stuck on the ground primarily. And it's very sticky, right? It has that texture, it has that energy where it sticks and it's roaming. It's staying around you. Slither. Now, the thing about the snake is it represents that it carries a venom, and it represents the poison of that ego mind. I don't want to throw around the word evil so much right now. I want to get to the metaphysics of what it carries, right? So I see if someone has mastered that energy and they've transcended it, that's where they look at the snake with more neutrality, right? But until you understand what it can represent, where it's pulling them, it pulls you and it wraps around you. That's the same thing that an entity does. Notice when it wants to take a human life or do what they want with the body, it will wrap around a human and squeeze. It's the same exact thing that these entities do, and a lot of them are reptilian based. A lot of these entities splinter off from a reptilian that I've been dealing with for years. These reptilians, I see them, and they don't have the power as they once did so much, because the awareness, you shift and you're more noticing them as like bugs, not in such like a hateful way, spiteful way, but they're there, and it's more like a parasite energy. And what the humans have to do to evolve is to transcend that reptilian-based matrix, which is the false materialism that keeps them only in the superficial mind, the ego mind, right? And so one word we can start with here is, and many words start with C-O-N. Do you know about this, C-O-N?
Go ahead, tell me.
So C-O-N, if you just say in blatant English, it means con, right? So some will tie it back and say, oh, in Latin, it has this root. Oh, and this, but they're in that mind. They're twisting things in the wrong direction. We got to work with what we got. We're in a timeline where this is our main language, and everything in English, casting a spell, spelling words. So you got to look at what's in front of you. How many words start with con? A very unbelievable, suspicious amount. We're talking close. We're talking 100 plus potentially. I mean, you got conform, condition, contract, confine, consume. That's just a small percentage. Conversation, right? Contort. Now, a lot, especially conform, you're putting yourself icon on a stage performing a concert. Icon. They're telling you their position is a con artist and they're conning them with a concert, because that's what a lot of these rituals on these stages are. 98% of them, 99% of them are taking energy, siphoning energy, and giving it to the one that made them famous, right? And we can talk about that more, but it's not even relevant. The most important thing is understanding the energy of the word. So each letter is connected to a number, right? So you can do it easily, like A, B, C. C is 3, B is 2, A is 1. You go in the alphabet and you use them and you add the numbers up, right? So if something comes to 5, if you match 3 letters like con, and if something comes to, for instance, let's just say that was to come to 5. 5 for me is a very imperative number in spiritual evolution because it represents change, transformation, but it also has a hook. That hook can keep them into the 4, 3, 2, 1, which is that similar to root chakra, lower body, lower evolution. Now, each number has a duality. There's positive in oneness, right? But there's also the negative of being immature, too spiritually young to even adapt to truth or evolve or have any interest in freedom and actual freedom. Now, 2 also is duality, 2, right? There's 2 of it, black and white. 3, creation. 4, it can pull you into the lower realm more, but it's also fortune. The word fortune has 4 in it, so it's abundance. But then you get to 5, and you're getting out of you're getting out of that lower evolutionary cycle, and 5 can keep you there. So they use the energy of something like con to keep conning you, to keep you contracted, as you mentioned earlier. When the embodiment contracts, the consciousness contracts. What happens is they're becoming small. When they're becoming small, they continue to fall into the trap. So that's where words are used against them, right? If you want me to be more clear, I can be more clear. But then when you get past 5, you got 6, which they look at as a demonic number. It's not just about the devil. 6 is also about, there's a reason Jesus died at 33, because 3 and 3 equals 6. So 6, he transcended the physical body. Look, 6, lower, it hangs into the lower realm. But the trick about 6 is you flip it into a 9. The 9 is the divine, the higher mind, timeless self, like we spoke about in the beginning. So everyone's goal is to get to that 9 energy. Don't take the numbers so literally. It's all symbolism, but it's leading you somewhere, and you got to ask yourself, in front of me, what do I got besides distractions? I got words, letters, numbers, energy from the universe, intuition. You got to take what you got, what's in front of you, and work with it. And if you can't compress and comprehend higher knowledge, which ancient civilizations have done beyond time, like Atlantis, the Mayans, many, if you don't, and the ones who are under the earth right now, if you don't work how they do, and you don't channel and use things like astrology or use universal power, universal connection, metaphysical knowledge, and you keep judging it and saying, man, this guy's rambling about words. Well, the snake is speaking up for you, and you'll continue to live that small, limited, confined life in a box, in a cage, known as the Saturn cube, which is the matrix.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on many points that you brought up here. I mean, words are the most ancient embodiment as you raise your resonance through your rite of passage as a Taoist. The magic is the ability to imbue and alter substance at will within a distorted material world. Because the metaphysics of Tao is very simple. The highest emanated state, which is the animation to everything, is what we refer to as the void, the Wu Ji, the primordial mother. And she animates consciousness. Consciousness animates the spirit. We refer to that as the Shen. The Shen animates energy. Energy animates the material state, which is lower distortion of energy potential. Everything has a currency. The currency in this material world is the symbiotic dance between yin and yang. That is from one stream. The absolute is recognizing the convergence of those two energies that creates a centric point. And once you enter that centric point, you realize there is no point, that all identity is dissolved. That's where you can acquire true absolute power, which is your everything and nothing at the same time. That power comes from conditioning. It's all energy potential. Energy is transitory and impermanent. It's a wave, like a crescendo of a firework. It pops off and then it falls back into itself and returns back to the dust, just like your body. But when you recognize that you can alchemize and actualize your immortal self, which is what we refer to as Shen Gong, spirit power, you bring the two together, attention and intention, and form the Shazam moment where immortality is crystallized in the material, where now you have access to all these variables that were not present to you when you were obsessed with the bouncing ball within the material state, which makes it a mundane sort of existence. You're beating a dead horse and preaching to the choir, but you're not getting anything. You're in an echo chamber. There's no reflection of the true self. And so from that, you find when we use words, we refer to it as the rhapsody to the remedy. And that rhapsody creates the poetic justice that's necessary to converge that immortal substance and imbue those words, and those words direct instant actualization of holiness. And they can, for magic, the charge you and I get right now, magic for Taoism is this: we are always interested in someone's karmic model. Their version of right and wrong, up and down, in and out, is really the sword that you die on. And so when we cast magic, we return everything to whole. No matter what the place, person, or thing is, it returns that resonance to a holy stream. So the side effect is that either you meet your maker and you return to holiness yourself, or the corruption of the finite mind, the bankrupt state, will make you aware of all the cracks in your own deficient personality that will have to merge with thoughts, feelings, and emotions that are transitory, impermanent. They are lesser than, they are not you. Yet you will recognize that they are being met because you're around someone that is emanating that resonance, and you can't deny it. It's like, I just don't like you. I don't know why. Or in turn, the opposite is, I love you. You're everything that I desire, because we're playing in this dualism. And so your resonance will precede you. As you know, commonly this happens to you all day long. You walk into a space, and that charge you and I are getting right now that congeals this moment as whole, this alchemizing union that we're having, it's a representation through the body that shows you the truth. This is real. This is not some fractured, finite mind, incessant rat in the wheel over and over again, just attempting to draw from something that is bankrupt, which is what everyone does. So when we meet that with the karmic model, it's your deficiencies that are going to return to your maker. Now the question is are you going to fight it from your perspective? You mentioned the snake luring you into the psyche and keeping you held in a lower frequency so that you can never meet yourself as whole. This is where people come across you or me, and they're having to address this, emperor's new clothes or the elephant in the room at that moment, and they can't make sense of it because it comes out immediately. They meet the resonance, they meet the energy, and they're like, what the? They're like, I love this guy, or I absolutely despise him, and I'm going to justify the reason I feel so deficient. Let me give you a bunch of character assassinations, some subjective nonsense. All this rubbish keeps coming out, spews out like verbal diarrhea. And this is part of the path. You and I know this. I mean, I had this conversation with JC many times because there's a level where within Taoism we refer to it, the selfishness to the selflessness requires the sacrifice. And that sacrifice is where you truly meet yourself as whole. And from that, the eminent default is you are in servitude and selflessness. You can't fight it. You've conditioned yourself to return to your true self. And the evidence is your participation is not required. And then people are like, what? Jifu, I can't understand the paradox, right? But the truth be known that you have created this little relationship with self within a human timeline that would identify the body as, and your personality as actually something of substance. And so from that, you'll always find that struggle. You'll always find that. Now, there's nothing more powerful. I mean, when I just dip into the rhapsody, and poetry is so potent because it lures the individual to actually have to embody a metaphor that makes the true essence of self undeniable as it starts to percolate the unconscious mind, bringing it to the forefront, going, wow, that makes so much sense. And, taking someone on that journey is quite simple. In the imminent death of self requires kneeling at the river of discontent, the firm realization that you are fractured is nothing more than the golden light that comes from the sun as it permeates the skin. You will go further and further into this union. Recognize your eminent power as your holy stream. From that, you draw from that stream. You drink that holy water and return to the power that you really are as one. Let yourself be known. Let yourself hear the words that are echoing right here, right now. And that, my dear friend, is an example of capturing that moment. And that is an example of rhapsody. And as you notice, it builds. Every word is imbued with a more dense energy that you recognize is engulfing the body, completely dismissing the intellect and the finite mind. And you're like, this is undeniable. I'm feeling the reverberation, the oscillation, the absolute potency of this. And it happens in seconds, but you must be able to craft from that and recognize that there are no limitations. Does that make sense?
Definitely. A few things came up when you were speaking, very relevant things for the collective. One is about Christianity. So we spoke about Jesus a few times, and, what they've done in this programmed religion now, the structure that they made them stay in the box, is don't ask questions, barely ask questions, you can't have this spiritual practice, don't touch a crystal, don't think. And these things where they say Jesus is the only way, it is like torture for him to hear that, because he doesn't want them to think that way. This is where what I do comes in, because all I'm doing is updating the system. I'm updating the system, because what they've done is they've corrupted the consciousness. He guides them to pure consciousness, which is the absolute state, which we were speaking about. And barely any of them know that, because they believe it's on paper. You pray to him and maybe, you're going to go to heaven, but heaven, your paradise, can be while this embodiment is here, which will automatically give you more longevity in your life. You can influence aging in a certain way, not in a dark, malicious way like certain ones in the world do, but in a more holistic way.
Mm.
That comes from remembering who you are, and that's all he wants you to do. That's why you said the word sacrifice. He was the sacrifice. Right now, it's being wasted because they don't know who he is. They don't know what he represented, because they think it's just about a few words on paper, which has been harshly altered over a long time of humanity. And what that was done for is because they've used his light and created a false light to warp them. It's a warp, because what happens is then they're following a system without knowing it, and they think they're doing the right thing. And that right there is a major dilemma with karma, because then they're creating a karma, but they're balancing it because they're showing you all these things about Jesus, and they're making things around you when you go to church seem so holy. But if no one's asking the right questions and they don't know themselves, they don't know what their true resonance is, their original state, then it's irrelevant. Almost everything they're worshiping, praying, talking, right, murmuring, right, all of these remarks, each remark they say, each statement, it's a program. It's a construct that was built by the same one who took him from this planet. We have to be very careful with religion nowadays. And the difference between this timeline and shifting to something more like what we would know as the new earth, or something just complete differential of perspective and a higher elevated humanity, comes from oneness of consciousness and remembering who you are. And you can only do that by knowing truly what someone like Jesus represents. And it's not only about him. There are many other beings you have heard of and haven't heard of that have sacrificed, that have lived in the mountains, that lived a very holy life, that moved objects like the ones who survived Atlantis and built the pyramids. Many things have happened where it's been blocked off because they rewrote history and they removed all of that. And they teach the children this cycle: false religion, false history, false knowledge. They teach them very mundane, nearly useless things with numbers. And they don't talk about what we talked about earlier about the true energy in numbers, right? Some that are stepping into spirituality, they look at angel numbers. Oh, the universe is communicating to me. It's 444 right now. But that's only showing them that there's something higher calling them to receive knowledge, to align with their true self. But if they're blocked and they think, oh, I'm a Christian, I can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, then they're putting judgments upon others. And that is the opposite of what Jesus stood for. That's the opposite of what he taught. So he actually wanted his followers to ask questions to him. He wanted many questions about spirituality, about the mind, about the body, about life, about God, about the universe. And he used things like astrology. Now they say that's demonic, that's pointless, that's against God. Or they make it seem like it's fake, you're making things up. But here's the trick. Everything you're seeing out there has been made up. They made it all up. This is where it gets really interesting, because that false rational mind, which I refer to as Satan mostly, that is what will keep them lured into that lower state. Lowered, right? Now, what's happening is they're constricting and they're only thinking as the body mind, rational mind. That creates a major instability in spirit, because they're never going to look up. They're never going to connect with the stars. They're never going to connect with their consciousness, which is what you truly are. And they're only going to think how the world trained you to think, to stay in the cage where they keep using you as a tool to prolong their system. And that system is an injustice to your true self. The true justice is when you awaken to what you actually are. And the words are only guiding you there. So we're using a lot of mighty words here, but that's only guiding them to what's actually here. And it's not the body. This is where it gets very subtle. And you have to be able to tune in and be attuned to higher alignment, to the ethereal realm, to the spirit realm, to sensing energy. Your intuition has to be turned on. Your third eye has to be open, because like the way I would see an entity to remove it with my hands usually is how I will remove it. And sometimes it does take extra effort, but the way I'll see it is the third eye, because I'm not seeing it from here. I'm seeing it from here, and that's adapting. A major word that kept coming up for me the whole time you're speaking several times was adapt. They have to be able to adapt. Now, if you're only in the rational mind and you're thinking off of limited science, you're thinking off of the matrix paradigm, then you're not going to be able to adapt, are you? You're going to be very fixed, and you're going very slow, very limited. You're not moving freely. But the second you look at the true energy within you, right now we have a pure reflection happening. It's an open channel, both of us. And what's happening with this is what they used to do with group meditation, how they used to have major manifestation in other civilizations, because they would use like what we're doing now with, let's say, 8 individuals, and it would create this enhancement of an energy field, and many things could happen, things that we wouldn't even believe in this current timeline. You can have beings appear that aren't in this realm and invite them here. That's one thing, right? This is actually what Jesus would do that, especially when he would take his followers to the mountain, to higher fields like a mountain or open energy field, and it would be spacious in solitude, and they would invite these beings in, light beings, and communicate. Mainly he would be doing the communication. The followers were absorbing. So the question is, what is your rapid absorption rate, right? What is your absorption rate? How long does it take you? Do you need another incarnation? Do you need to slip into some sort of lower time to be programmed, to be lost in a nightmare and hell, and then flipping between dreams and not knowing what truth is? Because one thing I've always noticed is you're just switching between the waking state and the dream state. So at a certain point, you have to ask which is which. You're always seeing realities playing out. You're connecting to infinite universes. What is the common trend of both? This is what a very wise being will ask. What is the common trend of both? That side, when you go rest and you're seeing other realms, and then here, when you keep coming back here, there's one thing in common, and it's not the mind, because your mind isn't always active like that in dreams. We all know it. There's something else. There's something else that's here that's much more powerful and timeless, and it's not subjected to time. It's aware of time. So universal law, metaphysics, very simple metaphysics, basic. If you're aware of time, time isn't aware of you. You're aware of time. It appears in front of you, then you bow to time. That is the Saturn worship system of the ones who make music, who are famous, the ones who have the false education system, the ones who have constricted humanity into a cage. They worship Saturn, Satan, same first 3 letters. Saturday. On the weekend, they put them into a weakened state, distractions, lowering themselves, consuming things that are dulling them even more, right? It's all a ritual, and then they go into the week to be weak. But if you stop following the calendar, which is all Saturn based, and the clock loop, you're aware of it. I'm not saying it's going to disappear. I'm saying you're aware of it. Then you're not stuck under its binding. It won't bind you anymore. You're very aware of it. And each month, each year, it becomes more loose. And gradually, simultaneously, you're aware of your thoughts. You're aware of the mind. You're aware of this body. Because what happens is, one thing you said, which I really wanted to add to, when they have this moment like we're having now, or they're tuned into it, watching this, some voice will speak up for them and say, oh, but this is wrong, or this can't be possible, or it's just, I'm imagining this, right? This is a very dangerous thing, because what happens is that is the exact moment where an entity or Satan, whatever you want to call it, will take them, and they go back into that play. That moment is your demise. You have to be very careful with that voice. You think that you're keeping things in check and you're organizing your existence. Let God organize it for you through being a channel and connecting with intuition. Feelings are more powerful than thoughts. Feelings are more original to you than thoughts. Thoughts are, that's why there's a phrase, an afterthought. It's not original to you, right? You think after. You don't think first. You feel. Thinking is a gradual experience. We have to not get lost in each thought, right? So that comes from getting out of that system. That is a thought-based narrative, right? The construct itself. So to stop living such a constructed false existence where they believe that voice, and what a wasted opportunity. Because through this reflection we have here, we've broken down time. I'm not feeling time. I highly doubt that you're feeling time so much right now. We're in more of a open ether, right? A lot of higher concepts, higher energy, divinity is here right now, right? And that pure source light can actually illuminate them out of that illusion and allow the transmutation to occur that they've been waiting for on a spiritual level. But if they listen to that psychological mind, one thing they refer to it as is the monkey mind. Why? Because it's constantly running around rambling, going crazy. So if they're believing they're that shit, they're lowering themselves to that. That's their standard. That's their identity. The word identity implies I entity. So if you have that fixed identity and your body, mind, ego, then there's an entity running the show. Maybe you want to add on to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything's an iteration of self. It's just all variables. It's a kaleidoscope of reality that really means that you can be everything and nothing at the same time. In definition, I mean, you can water it down to, numbers, letters, planets, systems. They're all just another distortion for you to be whole. In the presence of that state, I converge past, present, and future as one. I've never ever witnessed a healing where there's anything in the mix other than that convergence. So I've seen like bones fuse, gaseous seal, gangrenous flesh turn back to pink in color. I've seen it all. Tumors disappear. These are things that can be met with the spirit, and they are an absolute. The potency is real. Most people that look from my tutelage have experienced these things. I mean, it's like that is the norm. That is not supernatural. It's super normal. Yet people are not familiar enough with themselves to recognize that this is an innate, natural, primordial default of who you are. That primordial mother is the true essence, the magnetism, the eternal, immortal self as whole. Everything is animated from such. And when it's recognized, you walk through that centric point, that vesica point, and recognize you are all things and nothing. That just dissolves it all. So every different version is just a way for you to awaken yourself. Whether you're a psychic, a medium, a channeler. The only reservation I have with any of these, and I seem to pick up Brahmin transmitters all day long that have been doing it 20, 30 years, but they are siphoned from a succubus that tends to draw from them. Most people sell their souls because attention intention means you are pouring yourself into that very moment. And that if you don't understand how to condition yourself from the fundamentals, which you refer to as lower chakras, conditioning is the only answer. The moral compass is nothing more than a distorted version of your ability to make sense of it all. But if you condition the immortal self within the body and burn in the alchemization of such, all the lower centers become infused and embodied, giving you a free runway to the higher centers that then return everyone to a whole state. But the distraction is they can, as I mentioned before, spirit controls the energy controls the material. Most people stay in the spiritual baby ship between the material and energy. They never get past that because they can't find the path, the light, the way the way. What a coincidence. You can't find that because you're stuck in the construct, as you mentioned, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's just there's never been more a moment where wisdom teachers like yourself or myself are necessary to help people make sense. I come across Kundalini awakened individuals that are energetically sensitive. I must tell people there's no such thing as subtlety, in my opinion. Things only become more and more. The more you condition yourself, you can move yourself to a myopic point of intricacy within the energy, all the way up to engulfing this very material state that may consist of the universe and further. The intricacies of these energies are refined by your conditioning and your ability to move into one point and expand is just that, an embodiment. That body is the avatar that allows the spirit to see what is taking place. So, I mean, in conclusion, anything is possible. As you know, you are the same. You're experiencing all these things. You're teaching people, giving them a clear roadmap from something that is impermanent and transitory, and you're effectively nurturing their own true self. And that gnosis will be refined through wisdom teachings like yours, where you put all the pieces together, whether it's as myopic as identifying with words, letters, numbers, the tongue twisting dance of linguistics that manipulates the finite mind, or as basement level shit like the tarnished word of hypnosis, which is another phase of awareness. That's all it is. I've never met someone that doesn't like being blissed out. If I ever teach someone hypnosis, it starts with the basis of recognizing that the convergence of all these points make it possible. I don't even use the word hypnosis when I meld people into a pot. They'll just instantly return to a bliss state standing up asleep. So what's the answer? When I can give you a reverse hallucination, which is the definition one of my parapsychologist friends would say, I refer to it as shape-shifting. I turn myself into Justin Bieber and I erase your name, and you are perplexed by the fact you can't find it. This is power. This is the power of self. And recognize that someone that is in that moment, they are recognizing they can harness anything and make it possible. And then, then you go up to the higher states, like what you and I speak of, that is a channeled stream of absolute, where you can create anything because it's a spirit world and we're living in it. That's the true nature of reality, which people tend to want to dismiss or pretend that it doesn't exist. But, I can't. If I had a penny for every time I come across a Christian that says, I don't believe in energy or the idea that one man has the ability to harness God, yet they'll then in the next sentence go, well, there's certain people I don't like their energy. Whoa, there you said it. Hang on, whoa, hang on a second. Is that just a universal neutrality, or are you not aware of what the real potential of self is? That you're really just speaking out two sides of your mouth. You're not aware that you are having this moment. And that's where wisdom teaching, like the teaching you share with the world, is absolutely necessary right now. And it always has been. But, that path of awareness comes with a rocky road that could be vacant and delusional in its emanated state. You have to condition. You have to. And so you can go past any identity. We just refer to it within Taoism. It's energy potential. It's yin or yang, the inversion of all colors, the emission of all colors. And basically, you are identifying that incredible energy potential, and it's vibratory, frequential, and holds resonance. If you can meet that resonance, oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. That is a conditioned state. And that's where we enter it through the gateway, the most primordial state between yin and yang, between the breath in and the breath out, is that pause, that hold, that accumulation of the riches, absorbing of the riches is where the mother becomes clear. Oh, yeah, that potency is happening, brother. You can keep your eyes open and enjoy that. It's always happening, bro. It's like, holy shit, this is real. I like, taking objects and inverting it. So if you had a crystal, do you have a crystal?
Oh, yes, many.
Yeah. You got one on hand right now?
No, not right next to me.
Right. So I'll just invert the energy. It's called empty space. And so you'll hold the weight of it, and then I'll get you to put it down. I'll alchemize it and imbue it. You pick it up, it becomes like an anchor that could plunge you into the deepest, darkest point of the ocean because it's so heavy. Or in turn, depending upon whether you're extreme or polarized in one end or the other, you'll find that it's lighter, which tends to indicate that most people are consuming way too much material, which is the yang energy. The light, recognizing that there is light and darkness, the idea that I am of the light and the light comes from the darkness. If you don't recognize that that exists, you're pretty much fooling yourself. That, oh, it only comes from one stream of light. That light exists only because of the darkness, and that darkness will show it through all the impermanence, right? And so imbuing that and returning that to whole is really what we do as magnificent tuning forks of, as you refer to, God's will, God's power, God's absolute stream of holiness. This is what takes place. So let's talk about this as we start to wrap this up. What do you do for someone in their path when they find you? Because we're going to put your social sphere and interweb under this podcast. I want everyone to go out and experience what you refer yourself as Rad or J-Rad. Raad Enlightenment, J-Rad?
Raad Enlightenment.
Rad. So when you find Rad, he's clearly probably going to do one-on-one engagements or maybe multiple, maybe group stuff. I don't know how you tend to approach your wisdom teaching, because I want people to be very clear. This is not knowledge. Information fuckers are everywhere. They just want to consume more, like Pac-Man. They just want to chew it up. I need this workshop. I need this. I need to take more. I need to train in this. And they're a jack of all trade and a master of nothing. You either own your true self and go, I'm feeling this through the stream of God. I'm feeling this through the stream of Jesus. In my case, I feel this through the primordial mother of Tao. I feel this through my teachers, the three pure ones. This is a holiness. You can't refute it. It's true. It's happening. What's the rules of engagement for your wisdom teaching?
The most important thing is someone's openness, right? Yeah. Jesus couldn't teach anyone that wasn't open. He couldn't heal anyone that wouldn't believe. This is very true. So if someone is not physically, metaphysically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually open, then they probably wouldn't have made it this far, because 1 hour for a current conditioned human is like 1 year. Like, that's how they view that, because, constant gratification, constant distraction, which is actually just your own belittlement. So what I do is I take energy. So like, I've been doing this now for a minute or two, and I've got something here. I don't know if you can see it energetically.
Yeah.
It's there's
an emerald ball with emanated white light coming out of it.
Yes, a lot of light. And what this does is I'm enhancing my focus, and I'm going to push it into my energy body like this. And what I did is I changed the shape, like you mentioned earlier, shape shifting. So you shifted the energy into something, and it expanded into the energy body. So now I have more energy than I did the last few hours because I did that. So these energy practices, children actually begin their life knowing a lot of these things, but the parents subdue them because they put them into the system of Satan unknowingly, most likely, right? But that's what that system does, because they take the imagination. So what I'm doing is reapplying what the world has taken from you and awakening senses and knowledge, beyond knowledge, metaphysical insight, metaphysical abilities, what you're connected to beyond any individual memory, but the collective consciousness that is within every realm. So I'm bringing that to you, and I'm removing any entities that keep you from that. And I'm giving you direct channel guidance from source, because I walk with my source. I talk with him every day. I talk with him every night. This is what any being who is only devoted to truth does, right? Because you only speak back to what brought you here. If you have no thanks to what brought you here, then you are a servant to the serpent. If you don't have any thanks to what brought you here, because that's the whole definition of like that darker entity, evil energy, is so egoic, so lost in the false sense of self that you're deluded into the delusion. And the diversion from the enemy is that you only think in that fixation of holding on to your materialism, denying this. You're not going to expand what's possible. You're going to stay in the construct. You stay limited. You need constant fulfillment on a physical level. You can't handle energy like feelings like hunger, like desire, like temptation. You have to be able to shift beyond that and be aware of it. You're not here to be perfect, but if you can't create that space and welcome that within your embodiment, then you will stay subjected to hell. You'll be living in a constant hell. And you've been there for longer than you remember now. Most of you have incarnated more than once. So the time is now, beyond time itself. And that's what I do in a session. I will take them out of time. I will take the entities from their energy body, if there are any. Usually there always are. Open their chakras through energy movement. One thing I love to use is golden light. How do you feel about golden light? Golden light is very...
Well, it's like a graduation. Like, it comes up in auric emanation. I know when someone has achieved a certain level of conditioning, when that element is very clear within their field. You can't make this shit up. So when someone has conditioned themselves to that point of awareness, that element will become prominent. Also, platinum and silver, they all meet different levels of awareness that are integrated into the auric field. You can't bullshit your way out of that. Most people tend to pretend. Like, the difference between perception and imagination is the imagination is not actualized until you envelop what we refer to as a sacred infinite flower, which is the 9 petals of the sacred infinite flower create your absolute stream. So everything then from imagination is vivid. At 8K, 20K, 100K, you are permanent, and your ability to pull on this tapestry is now. Until that is actualized, perception and what you're experiencing is the only truth. And you know, the idea that you use imagination to visualize is a crutch and bullshit. Because what happens is people attempt to manipulate. They become further and further away from themselves because I'm manipulating. My manifesting teacher said I need to have a vision board. And with that vision board, I can, in my mind, you are a creator, absolutely 1000%. But until you are alchemized and actualized, it's conceptual. That's why nothing ever comes to fruition. You're like,
right.
oh, but I've been sitting here affirming things all day long. I'm using robotic affirmations and I'm doing all these things that are told to me within my manifestation coach, yet nothing is materializing. Nothing is icing within the material because you haven't completed. You're half cooked, you're half baked, you're distorted. And until you finish and complete that alchemization, you're always going to fall short and you'll never find your true self. It's just a matter of conditioning. Can anyone do it? 1000%. They just need to be shown the roadmap. There is a roadmap that is part of this journey that is so important. When you fulfill that roadmap, crazy things take place.
They have to reopen their sensitivity because they've become extremely insensitive, which is parallel with unconscious. And what happens is your very potent abilities as a human are turned off, not just telepathy and these things that can be used, but to feel. It's more important than writing things down. One step ahead of that is feeling what it's like to be there, but even more than that, transmuting the energy that's blocking it, welcoming through the channel major illumination. What does that do? It opens your energy field. It keeps you energy flowing in, and it's moving on both sides of the body, and it's conducive. It's going fully through. It's full efficiency, right? So if they want to be fully metaphysically efficient and awakened, what you're saying is very accurate. It can't just be conceptual. That's a very small part. That's maybe 5%, less or more. It's minute, right? What's very important is getting past the minimalistic approach. They're so meticulous.
You got to be a conductor. If your connectivity is not actualized, you cannot. And that comes from the breast. The most ancient respiration is the true emanation of self. That becomes whole. You can pull from that tapestry between breathing in and breathing out. You know very well. I mean, you and I love doing these interviews only because I get high as AF and I play in the energy all day. And that's my reality. Imagine your highest level of psychonautic experience if someone's inclined to want to distort themselves with something that is exogenous. Recognize that I live like that all day long and I don't have to pay any dealer to give that to me. I already emanate that. That's an actualization through what we call the three treasures: pineal, thalamus, and pituitary. When you actualize that, you use the culture medium of the blood to switch on and off genes at will, switch on and off the nervous system at will. Or autonomy turns into a monopoly because you are now the master keeper creator, imperium, dominion, maestro to your concert of your own self-realization, accessing the 50 trillion cells that is energy potential. You have that absolute power. This body is a lens of kaleidoscope of truth, and you get it from that. Well, this has been fascinating, my dear friend. I would like to have you on again at some point and go through more of this. What's most important, I want disciples, students, subscribers, 126s, all the people that are listening to this to go out and find Raad's enlightenment through the social media and interweb points under this podcast. And I want them to source his wisdom, not knowledge. Be very clear. Knowledge is misspent because once you have a crossroads of belief, that can be tarnished by anything if met with the same repeatable bullshit. You can only be actualized from the knowledge to wisdom through what Raad is putting out. This is an absolute actualization and alchemy. And I just want to leave this conversation with great gratitude and appreciation, full, wholehearted, swelling effects of our union, my dear friend.
Same for me, exactly the same. Full awakening to all particles, internal and external, and the merging of such is what allows the full metaphysical access to occur. And you said something about cells. Maybe we can speak next time more about that.
I would like that.
When they start to multiply their cells, this is the next level. Right now, we're on the beginning parts of awakening the consciousness. When they get to that energy manipulation, influence within, my goodness, that's when you start to feel things like how I felt the last 5 minutes. I felt like a pure bubble, a pure light bubble with all these colors, not just gold and white or blue, but colors we don't even see here, expand into infinity. I'm feeling that right now, and that comes through DNA activation. So they have to activate each strand of DNA. That comes through accepting what each being needs, which is a little help along the way. You have to be able to devote yourself to receiving the help, devote yourself to gathering the knowledge, the divine intel, divine intelligence, and then you'll get out of that time warp and you'll embrace your timeless self, which has no limitations.
Amen to that, my brother. Amen.
Amen.
I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom teaching on this podcast. And I look forward to continued conversations. And it's been an absolute delight and embodiment. And you are a beam of fresh air and divine presence that cannot be replicated. You have to actualize it. It's foolish to believe that from the finite mind that's possible. You need to go and explore further from the inside out. So again, I want to thank you, my brother. I appreciate you more than you know. I'm very grateful that you exist as a facet of the diamond of perfection, teaching this wisdom to others. I look forward to your return on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. I'll see you in the next one, guys.